In yesterday's video, we talked about handlers and magic. And today, I want to talk about what to do if you feel like someone put a curse or a hex on you. Because this is something that I personally dealt with during that period of my life when I was experiencing the targeting and the gang stalking and the sketchy experiences. So I wanted to share my personal experiences and how I stopped all of that, because at the time I was going through it, I could not find a lot of other resources. So I wore my Fueled by God shirt today because one of the things I want to talk about is what magic is. We have to have a basic understanding of magic. But for me, understanding magic means we also have to understand the quantum field and the nature of reality itself. So the CIA's own analysis and assessment of the gateway tapes, or the gateway process, talks about the holographic universe. Plus there's so much literature out there. There's a book called The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. That's just one I can think of off the top of my head. And then there's teachers like Abraham Hicks and Bashar, who talk about, Bashar specifically talks about how we are shifting between realities like every second, like billions in a second or something like that. So basically he describes reality as still frames of a movie. So at any point in time, it's like there's a still frame and you can stop it. So that kind of, I guess, would represent the different parallel realities or universes that we could potentially live in, according to Bashar. And then another great book that talks about this concept and really opened my mind up about it was the book Transurfing Reality by Vadim Zeland. I read that a handful of years ago, and that book blew my mind wide open, because my understanding of reality after I read that book was like, okay, so it's essentially our emotional state, which Abraham Hicks talks about a lot. So you can see, like, for me personally, I base my truth on a lot of different information that I absorb from multiple sources. And what I found is there's a little bit of truth in every source, but everybody has their own way of explaining things. So Abraham Hicks talks about the vibrational scale. Reality Transurfing is talking about essentially the multiverse theory. So there's multiple realities, and it is our emotional state that keeps us on certain timelines. So I like to imagine a 3D model of a globe, and you know how in 3D models there's lines that go up, there's lines that go down, and then they intersect at certain points. So I like to imagine each line on that globe is a different perspective of reality that we could have and that we could experience. But those points where the different lines intersect are those points when you consciously decide to shift to another experience of reality, or another, realm or multiverse experience of reality, based on your conscious decisions in that moment. So for example, I might wake up and realize I'm on a certain trajectory that is based on fear-based thinking. So it's creating a lot of situations in my life that make me feel powerless and full of fear. But if I'm conscious of that, and I can say, oh, this is just a timeline, because I'm feeding the timeline with my emotion. Now I can be a conscious creator of my experience, and I can say I'm going to consciously decide to shift into hopefulness, or shift into peace, or shift into even revenge and anger can be a higher vibrational state of being than fear and powerlessness. Not that I'm promoting revenge in any ways, but it is part of the emotional process of jumping from one experience emotionally to the next one that is a higher vibration. So hopefully you can kind of shift through that anger, revenge feeling pretty quickly. I know for me it is usually when I am angry about something or feel revenge, it's usually like I feel it very briefly, because ultimately it's not necessarily what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to harm anyone. If anything, revenge might look like just wanting somebody to get the karma that you think that they deserve. So anyways, the point is not staying in these emotions for too long. So we shift timelines and thus alter our experiences through shifting emotional states. And like I was explaining, those intersecting lines are the points where we can jump on a new trajectory into a new experience, onto a new timeline. So having a basic understanding of that can help us really look at magic for what it is. So depending on how you grew up and the beliefs that shaped your own perception. So for example, let's say somebody comes from a family that is of a certain religion, or maybe they're part of the secret societies or something. They work for an intelligence agency or had family that did or whatever. So those people growing up are going to have beliefs that are shaped by their caretakers, their early childhood experiences, the world around them that they absorbed when they were growing up. And ironically enough, as I always say in my videos, as children, we are still in delta, alpha, theta brain waves, which are all very impressionable, which is like we're a sponge absorbing information. Because when you go into states of meditation as an adult, like if you ever use solfeggio frequency or the gateway tapes or different brainwave entrainment frequencies on the internet, your goal is probably to be in delta or theta, where you can reprogram your subconscious, and sometimes even alpha, you can lightly reprogram in that state of mind as well. But when I think it's after we turn 12, most adults are going to be in beta. So my question is that because of conditioning, societal conditioning, or is that just the natural way our brains progress while we're in this earthly experience? So I don't exactly know. If you do know, feel free to share that with us in the comments. But all of that to say, we are a product of our environment. So if you grow up in a family that practices magic, that truly believes in whatever entities that they might serve, that's even had a real life experience of connecting with one, maybe you saw some things that most people would never see, that they might think that you're crazy for seeing. All of that is going to shape your experience and your beliefs about the power that magic can have on you. Versus somebody who might have grown up with an easy life in the suburbs. They're not exposed to magic type stuff. They have a very, white collar or blue collar, a Stepford Wives type family where they're not exposed to that kind of stuff. So those people may not have the same beliefs about magic, or may not believe in magic at all based on what they've grown up with. So in their form of reality, not to mention the social media algorithms that also program us, but in their form of reality, they may not have those belief systems because they haven't experienced it. And it is, after all, personal experience that can determine our beliefs. So we have to kind of start at that basic understanding that everybody's going to have a different perception and experience. However, our beliefs, because our thoughts and feelings are kind of interconnected. We can either have thoughts that are birthed from certain feelings, or we can have feelings that are birthed from certain thoughts. They kind of feed each other. So when we have thought and emotion that are powering specific beliefs, that's when they manifest externally. So then they start shaping our actions and our overall long-term belief systems. So for somebody who has a long-term belief system about magic being real, and it's the thing they always resort to, and it works no matter what, and it only works when they grab hair and when they grab stuff that they need from spell books and different herbs and stuff. That's the only way it works for them because that's what they believe and that's what they experience and that's what they were taught. Then those people have a very strong belief in it because their reality proved that to them. Whereas other people who don't have that experience or those beliefs may be powerful manifestors naturally. So they're not using spells and potions, etc., but they still might have the power within to manifest experiences to themselves, because at the end of the day, it all goes back to understanding the nature of this reality that we live in, understanding that we live in a smorgasbord of experiences. So whether that's one hologram and we just stay in one place and there's an infinite amount of potentialities that we could experience while we're in these bodies, but it's going to depend on what we give our focus on or what we put our attention on. Whether it's something like that or it's something like we're literally shifting into different versions of reality. I think it's essentially kind of the same thing, right? So the thing to understand is that our mind, our focus, and our emotions is what's going to make us a vibrational match to particular experiences and timeline. So it's not like these things don't exist. They exist. And sometimes we manifest situations unconsciously or subconsciously in order to prove to ourselves that they exist. And sometimes we manifest them unconsciously because we want to experience our own power, especially if you're like a powerful person and you came into this life to learn about power and control maybe, and maybe you wanted to make a big impact. Most people on this earth are not going to make an impact if they're not real and relatable. So one of the ways we get to be real and relatable with people is we go through the hero's journey. So we go through some pain, we go through some trauma, we go through some really difficult experiences, and then by the grace of God, glory of God, we end up walking out on the other side. And that's what creates strength, resiliency, and also an appreciation for life and the life that we have now, especially if we've managed to get ourselves out of these situations. So I always like to tell people, if you are a targeted individual and you've experienced these unspeakable things, then that path is not for everybody. Not everybody has the sturdy soul and the strength to experience that. So if we can start kind of patting ourselves on the back and saying, I chose this on some level. I know that's hard to hear, and take this with a grain of salt. You don't have to believe what I believe. I'm just sharing how I got out of the situation, and it might be something that might be helpful to other people too. So not here to argue with anyone, or to victim shame or anything like that. This is just how I reframed my experiences, and had I not reframed my experiences, I don't think I would have got out of them if I had remained a perpetual victim. So I like to tell people, ask people, how can you reframe those experiences? And one of the ways we can reframe them is to say to ourselves, well, I must be pretty powerful if all these people were tracking me. So rather than keep the story alive through my attention, through my focus, through repeating the story, because I don't know if you guys noticed, if you watched my video yesterday, I talked about my experience with my ex-boyfriend who forced me to go to a satanic concert. And when I started talking about the story and how I had to attack myself to get away from him because he looked like he was like a murderer about to attack me, and he was having like a nervous breakdown, I started living that in my body again when I started talking about it. So I think it's common for people who have experienced trauma, when we first kind of get out of it, there's this period of reliving it, because it's like, oh my God, like I have to get this off my chest. I can't believe that happened. We want to talk to people about it. But when we talk about it a lot, so like when we hold on to this story for years, which I've done that before, I've held on to certain stories for years, and then I keep manifesting the same experience but with a different person because I'm on the frequency of that story. And every time I tell the story, my body feels it. My voice gets faster. I sweat. It's like I'm reliving it. So this is kind of like where it can feel kind of difficult, because it's like, well, we don't want to stop telling our stories, but I think there's a different way to tell them. There's different things that we can focus on. We can either call ourselves a victim, or we can call ourselves a survivor. And for me personally, I like to call myself a survivor. And when I reframe these experiences, and when I share them with the community, the goal for my channel is to acknowledge that these situations exist for people. They're real. And I know that a lot of people have been gaslit by a lot of people in their lives to believe that they weren't real or they were, silenced, forced into submission. So I want to validate your experience. I would like us to validate each other's experience. However, it's so important that we don't stay stuck there. So that's why I always try to provide tools for healing. And I like to dissect the why on a lot of things, because if we don't understand the why, how are you fully going to lean into the solution if we don't understand the why? So all of that being said, how do you escape a psychic attack, a hexing, a curse, when what's going on the quantum level when we're experiencing these things? So like I said, everything comes down to this holographic reality, the simulation, whatever you want to call it. And I think Dr. Stephen Greer does a great way of explaining this. Like he said, when we go into states of meditation, we experience the entire hologram of the universe, like all the potentialities. And he said that even if 1% of people shift their vibration to fear, to peace, to love, that 1%, because love is such a high vibration, has the potential to shift all of the 100% of particles or molecules in a system. So your love, your peace, your acceptance is more powerful than your fear, even though fear feels like a strong emotion. Once you get your body used to working itself up the vibrational scale and experiencing different emotions, because the other thing we have to understand is that fear is a pattern. It's a literal pattern. So sometimes you have to work to talk yourself out of it and train yourself out of states of fear. But once we start doing that, it starts to become more natural. So then over time, it will be easier. It's kind of like meditation. If you start meditating, you've never meditated before, you've never sat with yourself in silence, it's going to be really difficult for most people. And most people will give up before the miracle happens because they're going to be like, well, I can't do this. It just isn't for me because I can't turn off my mind. But that's part of the process. Part of the process of meditation and working yourself up vibrationally is to accept that. Accept that this is difficult. This thought that this is difficult is a thought. I'm observing this thought. I am not this thought. The point of meditation is to teach me that I don't have to over-identify with my thoughts because I am not my thoughts. So over time, it helps train us to observe the thoughts, let them go, and then consciously choose new thoughts. So consciously choosing new stories. And the benefits of meditation grow exponentially. So for example, it may be hard and difficult in the beginning. Ooh, got a bug in my face. But then over time, it's gonna, go up real fast. So at a certain point, you're gonna cross a threshold where it's gonna get easier and easier and easier and easier. So that's one great tip and way of kind of training your vibration to not exist in states of fear, because fear and powerlessness and shame and guilt, even anger and revenge, these are the lowest level emotions, lowest frequency emotions, lowest on the vibrational scale, and they make us a vibrational match to these experiences. And guess what's on that frequency? Spiritual attacks, trauma-based mind control, alien abductions, like all of these really scary experiences. And I'm not victim shaming here. I think sometimes we are legit victims, so we can't help what family that we grew up in. We can't help that these experiences happen to us. But if you're watching this right now and you're an adult who's been through this, I want to give you hope that you have power as an adult to change these things. And it may not be easy, but what's on the other side of that and of those choices is going to be, you're going to feel so empowered, you're going to feel so bold, you're going to feel so brave, and you're going to find peace when we wake up to the power that we actually have. So the first thing I always recommend for people who are going through spiritual attacks is meditation, and force yourself to do it. I had to sit with myself and kind of force myself to just sit there. It was uncomfortable, and I did it. And over time, I got better at it, and I'm so glad I pushed myself to sit through it. Another thing was giving up substances, because that's the other thing. We have to look at, maybe addiction versus substances. So maybe if you're using a substance occasionally may not affect you that much, may not be a big deal. The problem with that is most people are not honest with themselves because the addiction has taken a hold and their addiction brings them comfort. But I have to ask you, which is something I also ask myself, why do I have to alter my mind daily? And sometimes multiple times a day. Sometimes I have to alter my mind when I wake up in the morning, and then 2 hours later at lunch, and then 2 hours later when I go outside again because it's wearing off, and then another 2 hours later. And then sometimes I get up at 3 in the morning to alter my mind because I have it on me and it just feels good and I like being in this state of mind because I feel like myself. The other common trap that people get in is like the college kid trap, like or the, after work with your buddies trap, like going to happy hour. Your whole social life is binge drinking with your friends. So in that case, you may not have started as an alcoholic or addict trying to escape your feelings, but because of what alcohol does to you, because it's poison to your nervous system and your brain, it can create addicts over time. That's honestly what happened to me when I was 19. Like, I think I started drinking as a way, maybe there was a part of me that wanted to escape from, actually I would say there's definitely a part of me that wanted to escape, because my parents were going through a divorce. I was off on my own in college, so I wanted to feel better. But also, at some point, it just flipped that I was just drinking to drink, and then the damage that the alcohol was doing was making me depressed. Alcohol is a depressant. It makes you depressed. And then before I knew it, I was in and out of therapist's office, says diagnosed with ADHD, depression, anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder. At one point when I was younger, they thought it might be bipolar or borderline personality disorder. And there was a bunch of medications that I tried, and I hate to not give people hope, but none of the medications worked for me. They may have put a temporary Band-Aid on it and numbed me out for a little bit, but long-term they didn't work because my soul knew that I was capable of more. I'm not here on this planet to just be numb and to not feel. My emotions can be used as fuel to catalyze my growth. And it's kind of like I was saying the other day, in order to be up here and make a quantum leap, you kind of have to dip down first or pull yourself back like an arrow before you can really spring forward in a powerful way. So on some level, I believe those of us who on a soul level are here to make impact and we are here to learn, and we came forth into this earth and said, I want to make a difference. I want to be powerful. Then our spirit guides or whatever, our subconscious was like, all right, to experience true power, with great power comes great responsibility. So it's almost like if you want the platform, if you want the, financial resources, whatever, it's almost like we have to go through these experiences as an initiation period, because I truly don't believe, granted, I think there's a lot of people in society who have money and resources and they're not necessarily using them in, what I would consider a helpful way. But who am I to say that on a spiritual level, maybe they are helping people awaken? Maybe through the abuse cycles and systems, they're helping more people awaken. And I do believe there is going to be a shift at some point. I think it's already happening now, where a lot of these people, we're going to see them fall from grace publicly. I've already watched it happen with a lot of these people, especially Hollywood. All the people who sold their soul for fame, now it's so obvious. And it's like, they're probably losing fans. They're probably having a harder time making, getting paid. And a lot of these celebrities, I met somebody who had a huge Instagram following who was involved in this occult stuff. And he was waking up in sweat. He had arthritis when he was 30. He had a drinking problem. So many things were going on with him that a healthy or normal, or if there is such a thing as normal, 30-year-old or whatever, should experience. But I think that these people who are taking on a lot of stuff spiritually are getting, punished for it behind the scenes. They get punished in a way they can't sleep. They may have money and material riches, but that's not the same as spiritual wealth and abundance. I would, and knock on wood, I would rather be happy than have money. Money does not create happiness. I'm going to turn around because it's getting hot, but I've had periods where I had a lot of money and I wasn't happy. And I was, I feel like tilted kilt and those restaurants where you're dressing pretty for tip money or whatever might be like the precursor to potentially being a stripper someday. So it's like, I'm not saying that everybody who works at those places are doing that, and I didn't do that, but I'm just saying it kind of, you're objectifying yourself, and one of the ways you're making money is through flirting and being, like being flirty with your customers, so they leave you a bigger tip. Like the girls who made the most money at those restaurants were the ones who were really leading people on. So I made enough money to survive, but I did not make the amount of money that some of those girls were making, because there are certain things I'm like, I'm not gonna like lie to somebody and fake interest. Like I'll be nice and friendly, but I'm not gonna give anyone the wrong idea. So my point is that if you're willing to bend your morals a lot of times, you're able to make more income. So some people are willing to do that, but the price that they pay is oftentimes behind the scenes. We're not seeing it. So we can't judge people on how successful they are based on their income, because we really have no idea what they're going through behind the scenes. So let's backtrack a little. One of the ways to support yourself if you feel like you're experiencing some kind of psychic attack, starting with meditation, being honest with ourselves about addiction, really asking ourselves those difficult questions. Am I trying to numb something? Am I trying to avoid something? Why? Or am I just acting on autopilot because my body wants to stay in homeostasis? So at this point, it's a physical addiction. So how can I step away from these things? Because the other thing we have to understand, this is a big lesson for me. When I had the spiritual attacks and somebody did black magic and they tried to pass off their karma to me by sending me an entity or demon doing some kind of magic. The other thing is like, they gave me my own bathroom when I went to their house. I thought that was weird. Maybe it means nothing, but isn't it a little sketchy that somebody would say, I'm not going to use the bathroom while you're here. It's only you. So were they collecting my trash after I used their bathroom? Did they have cameras in there? Why aren't you using your own bathroom? That's what I don't understand. He would literally leave the apartment to go to the bathroom. So like, what was happening there? I don't know. But my point is, this person, this individual, always cooked for me, which on the surface I was like, that's very sweet that you're cooking for me. They made me teas and concoctions and would say, oh, this has mushrooms and chamomile in it to help you sleep. And one time I was over there and he was like, did you drink the whole thing? Did you drink the whole thing? Make sure you drink the whole thing. And I got so sketched out. And I think back to that time and I'm like, were they trying, did they spike my drink with something? Or was this like a spell they were doing? And in order for their spell to work, I had to drink the whole thing? I don't know. And another time they gave me a glass of champagne and I got so sick from that one glass that I was leaning over in pain for like an hour and a half on the floor of their bathroom, feeling like I was going to throw up. So, this person was, at the time I thought they were like my best friend. So this was the person that practiced chaos magic. And from their point of view, probably like their belief system, how they grew up, like they thought chaos magic, they were doing it for the greater good based on whatever, program that they were in. But this person on the inside seemed miserable. They were always talking crap about other people. They were overweight. They were sweating all the time. They were addicted to a lot of different substances, and they were just not happy with themselves. And they were like trying desperately to find love in all the wrong places. So it's almost like they were using magic as a way to make themselves feel all powerful. So it's so ironic because rather than looking at themselves, in which we have all the power, because we are the gatekeeper for who we allow into our lives. We're the gatekeeper for our emotions and our feelings, our actions, the stories we tell ourselves. So rather than focusing on that, there's people out there that focus on, well, what can I do to other people to get what I want? And then it ends up biting them in the butt. So I believe karma is very real because I watched it happen with these people. And if you've ever been, on a Reddit forum or a Facebook group about witchcraft or anything, like just reading comments in there for fun. Sometimes I like to go on those groups. I think I went through a phase a handful of years ago when witchcraft or whatever was trending. I feel like it is trending now, but there's a difference between these girls like I was, like, who's calling ourselves a modern day witch just because we know about astrology or whatever, versus like people who are really practicing the craft and like they've got the spell books, they've got the elements, they understand how magic works, they're calling on entities, etc., etc. So I never got that far, but I've learned a lot just by being in those groups and just like the people that post in them that will pop up on my feed every now and then, like who want to do spells on people. And I'm just like, geez. So I'm like kind of like observing this stuff from the background out of curiosity and seeing that a lot of these people who are wanting to do the revenge spells, like you just click on their profile picture or you just hear the way they talk and present themselves on the internet and you're like, well, it's clear that you're not happy either. But then within that group, there's like the majority of people probably in that group are the ones who are like, no, do the self-love spell. Like it's all comes back to yourself. You don't want to do a spell on a partner and go, you know, intrude upon their free will. It's going to come back to you. So like people share their stories and stuff about how this magic messing with the occult comes back to you. So for me, that just kind of continues to reaffirm this idea of the law of attraction and magic. We're all a vessel for magic, whether we're doing occult rituals or we're simply intending for something to happen with our mind. Like teachers like Neville Goddard talks about this as well. He was kind of like, I don't know, the grandfather or like he was on the leading edge of law of attraction stuff back in the day. So a lot of law of attraction teachers reference him, and I don't know if he was into occult or witchcraft or anything like that, but his whole thing was like live in the end, visualize the end. And he did an experiment with people that would have people who took his courses imagine a ladder, because it's something that people don't have attachment to. And then like all these people, after they imagined the ladder and they imagined themselves climbing a ladder before bed, they would manifest a scenario in their life where they had to climb a ladder. So experiments like that. And here's another one from another book. I haven't read this book. I really want to read it. I think it's called E Squared or something I think it's by Pam Grout. But apparently it's a set of experiments to try on yourself to prove that you're creating your own reality. So one of the exercises in there, I believe, is imagining or intending to see a green car, like a lime green car. And a lot of people who have shared about this book and tried these experiments will talk about how they started believing in the law of attraction after doing this because they would start to see green cars. Another thing people try is like just intend to find $1 sometime in the next 24 hours. And then most people will kind of like forget about it, not think about it. And then finding $1 is just like the universe saying like, hey, you're creating things here. So once you start realizing that you have some control over it, that is when you have the ability to like really consciously control what's going on in your life. So like people who rely too heavily on witchcraft without understanding the quantum field, quantum entanglement, and the nature of reality itself, they probably have a different version of reality where, you know, they've got to feed the entities or whatever they believe in to manifest whatever they want. So in a way, it's almost like feel sorry for those people because they're trapped in that limiting belief system. So they keep manifesting those scenarios in themselves and they create a hard, scary life for themselves. Maybe some of them enjoy it. I don't know. But anyways, all that to say, still is important to understand the effects that it's having in the quantum field, like I said. And their magic may work for them, but because they're on the vibration of revenge, anger, fear, powerlessness, ultimately, eventually that magic comes back around to them. Like in the instance I shared the other day, the guy tried to pass off his bad karma to me about the car stuff. So my alternator died while I was on a road trip. And then literally like a couple weeks later, something happened with like his radiator or something. And then he got a dent on his car, on his like really expensive vanity plate car. And his radiator costs a lot of money to fix, apparently. So it's just kind of like, okay, so I paid $200 or $300 for a radiator, and you paid $900 for, or I paid, sorry, $200 or $300 at the time. I think it was like closer to $300, like $297 to get an alternator. And it's so funny, like the law of three in magic. You then, right after doing that spell on me, now your radiator dies and you have to pay $900. So it's literally the law of three. And I just want to share another side note, personal experience. This doesn't have to do with magic, but this just is the thing that proved the law of three to me. One time I was at the supermarket like years and years ago, and I I was checking out some food at a self-checkout, and I rang up the potatoes, and they didn't register or whatever. So they were already in my bag. And then by the time I saw the receipt, I was like, oh, I guess I got those for free. So I like walked away thinking like, cool, the universe gifted me with something. So maybe the right thing to do probably would have been to go back to the store and be like, oh, I didn't pay for these. But the next day I had a trunk show and somebody stole a $15 bracelet. So the $5 bag of potatoes that I got for free the next day was stolen from me times 3 at my trunk show when somebody tried on a bracelet and took off with it and technically stole it, and I didn't get paid for it. So that taught me like instantly, you can't mess with this stuff. Like karma is very real. Or is that just a construct based on what I believe? I don't know. But anyways, so what does it mean though when you're the victim of magic? We've talked about how those people get their karma. What about you? How do you get out of the web of their curses and their hexes? Well, like I said, besides meditation and sobriety, which is going to keep you clear-headed and in charge of your energy field and hopefully your emotional state, because we don't control our emotional state with substances. We might think that we are, but if the underlying reason we're doing the substances is to escape, then you're not putting a blanket on those things. You're literally just, it's like pausing the emotion and then it all comes back. So you're creating a dam in your energy field. So when that stuff finally does hit you, it's going to be harder for you to deal with because you've been avoiding it for so long. So the other way, besides those very important things, that we may break free from spells and hexes and curses is by taking a look at our personal belief systems about them. So examining our beliefs and asking yourself, do I want to believe that this hex, that this black magic, that this curse has power over me? Because remember, you get to choose. And if you don't believe that you can, I highly encourage you to try out some law of attraction experiences and take a look at some law of attraction books and different experiments that you can try to start to prove to yourself that you are in control more than you think you are. So understanding your own belief system and consciously deciding, I don't want to believe that anymore. The other thing that helped me was a lot of my spiritual attacks were happening at 3 or 4 in the morning. And at the time, I was a coffee drinker. So even after I quit MJ, which helped with the attacks right away, but then about 5 or 6 months after the initial attacks stopped, after I blocked everybody, after I decided to quit MJ, after I got out of the physical energy field of those people, after I started blocking people on social media, and I went kind of, I was hanging out behind the scenes, or I was, like when you're going into hiding essentially. I was not sharing a lot of stuff publicly at the time. I was doing a lot of work behind the scenes, doing a lot of healing behind the scenes, and I wasn't posting a lot of stuff publicly. So I was hiding out for a little bit. So I almost forgot my train of thought, losing it. Okay, so hiding out behind the scenes, blocking people, quitting MJ, and that's right. I was, a couple months later, the attacks came again. They just so happened to come during an eclipse portal, which is common, because if we're thinking that the magic is coming from someplace outside of us, it is possible that certain groups and practitioners are using eclipse portals to still do magic on people during that time. So it's possible that if you're waking up at certain times, it could mean that somebody is doing a spell on you and you're picking up on it through the quantum field, almost like if you were going to remote view someone. So it's possible that I was picking up on things that they were doing, or maybe this was just water season, Pisces season, eclipse season. So it's common for stuff that's been stuck in our emotional field to start to purge around this time. So I think that was also a natural process. But the other thing that was so profound about it, my mentor told me that 3 and 4 a.m. in Chinese medicine is when your liver is detoxing. And at the time I was drinking caffeine and I kept drinking it later and later in the day. So I think it was interrupting my sleep. Now, coffee and caffeine can also fry the adrenal glands and create cortisol, your stress hormone, especially if you're super sensitive. Like I'm so sensitive to substances. That's the other thing. I think a lot of like us who are more spiritual, or not more spiritual, but like on that path of conscious awakening or whatnot, like those of us who are into it and into teaching it and here with a mission, I think a lot of us are extremely sensitive to substances. So if you are empath, highly sensitive person, etc., you probably fall in that category. So it didn't take much alcohol to give me that effect. It didn't take much MJ to make me feel a certain way. It didn't take much, caffeine to really affect me. So I decided at that point I was going to stop with my second cup of coffee. So I kind of tapered down on coffee. And then for the first couple weeks, I just started doing like a quarter amount of decaf in there. And then the next week it was like half a cup of decaf. And then the next week it was 100% decaf instead of regular. And then I did go some days without decaf completely. And I did feel good those days. I drank ginger tea instead. But then I ended up going back to decaf coffee. But during that time, all of the spiritual attacks stopped. I stopped waking up at 3 and 4 in the morning. My dreams were coming back. Another friend gifted me with some raw red jasper from Page, Arizona, and I keep that on my nightstand. So that was also something that helped my dreams come back because it's supposed to be a protective stone and it protects you in the astral realm. So I don't know why I haven't talked about crystals more. I strongly believe in crystals, if not just as a talisman and a permission slip, as Bashar says. Some things we just have to use them as a permission slip to believe in, and they can help us simply through the belief that they help us. So crystals are super powerful. So sometimes it's a physical thing that might make us a vibrational match to these experiences. Because like I was saying, with caffeine, if it's frying your adrenal glands and creating stress hormones, when your body's in a state of stress, as Joe Dispenza says, you will only have access to thoughts that are stressful. And likewise, when your thoughts are primarily stressful, they're creating chemistry in your body, stress hormones. So it's a cycle that keeps feeding itself. So one of the ways you break that is by focusing more on gratitude and making a conscious decision. And one of the other ways to really do this, if you're not good at controlling your emotions consciously yet, is to start meditating. Set a timer if you have to. Put it on a calendar in front of your face. Make it the screensaver of your phone. Remind yourself, my healing is the most important thing. I'm going to meditate. I owe this to myself. People have been stealing from me my whole life, and they've been siphoning my energy and mind controlling me, and I'm not going to let it happen anymore. So I'm going to reclaim energy over my field because I am a sovereign human being. So I'm going to make this commitment to myself. I'm going to start meditating. Maybe part of your commitment is also tapering off of substances. Maybe you don't quit completely. Maybe you just start to say no when your friends are asking you to go out for happy hour. Maybe you limit it to 1 or 2 times a week instead of 5 days a week. Maybe you switch to decaf coffee. So we have to pay attention to the relationship between what we're consuming and the chemical reactions going in our body physically, and how that's influencing our emotions, and how our emotions and thoughts are influencing the experiences that happen to us. So I promise you, when you start to pay attention to that stuff, you will start to let go of these disempowering experiences. You're going to start attracting higher vibrational people and experiences into your life. So belief systems are very important too. All of these systems kind of work together, and I've compiled it all into a course for you called ESP Development and Remote Viewing Mastery. So in that course, I provide a 21-day habits tracker to show you where your low vibe habits might be keeping you stuck in these lower states of consciousness. I go over Kundalini energy and the chakras. I go over the basics of human design, so understanding how we are influencing each other on the quantum field. How are my thought forms impacting you? How are your thought forms impacting me? Where am I taking it in? Where am I amplifying it? Where am I overly sensitive to my environment? How can I protect myself? And I also include a guided meditation that is supposed to act more like training wheels. So eventually, my hope for those who take the course is like you'll stop relying on it at some point, but it can be a good starting point to just like show you how to start with these techniques. And then I share remote viewing and lucid dreaming techniques, and the whole course is designed to help you claim sovereignty over your energy field and to start understanding your emotions, because the other big part of that course is going over the emotional guidance scale. So understanding our emotions and essentially Like the most important way to break a psychic attack or a black magic spell or a curse that someone put on you is self-awareness. Self-awareness. I cannot say that or, say that with more passion, because self-awareness is what's going to break the spell. The reason that these people have spells over you is because they're using forms of mind control. Again, whether it's straight out of MK Ultra, Monarch Programming Handbook, or if this is just manipulation tactics, sales tactics, NLP, whatever they're using, witchcraft, whatever. Different people are going to have different tactics, but the root is that there's people out there that can control you and do try to, and you're only a vibrational match to them because you give them that power. And I know that's like not easy to hear, because we ask ourselves, why? I'm not choosing this, I'm not choosing this. Well, no one is taught these tools when we grow up. It's not like we're born into a world that's like, all right, this is how you meditate, this is how you're a sovereign being, this is what Kundalini is, this is what these weird feelings rising through your body are, this is how you affect somebody with your thought forms, this is how like people are actually telepathic, but we're not going to tell you that because that would rob people, that might create what they consider chaos. If everybody woke up to their own power and realized that, hey, we don't need these systems and organizations, because the more, I guess, enlightened you are, it means you're vibrating on a higher frequency with love. And when you're more often in that frequency of love and peace, you could care less what somebody else is doing, because you understand that the power is within you. You understand your power as a conscious co-creator. You understand how to talk yourself into those higher vibrational feelings. You know how to manifest good for yourself, and you can even manifest good for other people. I've like put prayers out into the universe for other people and watched good things happen to my friends and family too. So there's two sides of the spectrum. There's black magic and there's, white magic and love. And magic in itself is, we may consider it to be inherently evil, but it's really just different experiences on the quantum field in this holographic reality. So there are different experiences that you can tap into in your lifetime. So if you don't want to experience hexes, curses, attacks, get really good at understanding yourself, understanding if you have any addictions, understanding how to heal from your own trauma, understanding how to track your emotions and talk yourself into higher vibrational emotions, and stop fear-based thinking when you're really sitting in it. All of these things will ultimately help you break the attack. And the most important thing too is understanding that it doesn't work if you don't consent to it. The only reason those attacks ever worked on me is because I was incapacitated because my daily use of MJ. So I was paranoid, because that probably also altered my brain chemistry and made me paranoid, because I don't know what they're putting in the dispensary stuff. I think that's different because they're spraying it with pesticides and chemicals that are way over the limit in a lot of cases. From what I heard, there's a news article about it that came out like a year ago, which ultimately led me to stop, because I felt like my use of it was just making me paranoid. And it didn't matter how much I used, I would always feel like it was never enough. So that was like step one for me to unravel that. Step two that helped was getting rid of coffee and like not drinking it so late in the day. So paying attention to what I'm eating, making sure that I'm not, through my diet, making more chemical reactions in my body that's going to make me pump out these stress hormones that's going to make me a vibrational match to nightmares, to dreams, to spiritual attacks. And then step three was like deciding consciously. These people don't get to have power over me. They only had power because I gave it to them. But like praying to God, to the universe, to Jesus, like Jesus, saying Jesus' name, whether or not you believe in Jesus, like through going to church or a specific type of religion, there is power in the name of Jesus. And if you say it during a nightmare, every time I say the name Jesus, and when I'm having a nightmare, like it vanishes completely. I immediately am transferred back into my body and away from the entities or the cult or whatever's in my dream, the demons in my dream. I've had dreams of demons, and that have felt so real, so real. And then I said, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And then I immediately came back to my body and I was saved from those dreams. So understanding that to your core, that you are protected. We all have this inherent protection. It doesn't matter what we've done. We can always change things around. We can always rewrite our story. we shouldn't beat up on ourselves for not understanding a lesson because we didn't have information at the time to understand it. So I believe that for the most part, intention is stronger than, like, sometimes people have good intentions and accidentally do bad things. And I want to believe, like, not signing off on like anybody's, you know, bad things that harm others, but I do think that people deserve to learn from their mistakes, and they should still get punished for like what they did. Like if you murder somebody, obviously you should go to jail or whatever, but like there's still room to grow, to learn, to be a better person ultimately. So anyways, I hope all this has been helpful. The other thing that might help you in the instance of a spiritual attack is understanding your personal astrology chart. So you can look into your eclipse cycle and see what planets are activated. For example, in my case, I had Pluto and Capricorn transits during the time that I was getting attacked, and also Neptune transits. And Neptune transits are like spirituality, and it was Neptune in Aries that was affecting my third house. So it was like my ability to be seen and to communicate. So it was almost like I had to go through that last final test of like getting rid of like those entities in my life that I felt were stealing my voice in order to fulfill my purpose and my desire to speak more openly in front of people. So astrology readings can really help you. And I do work with people one-on-one. I have a limited number of spots because my channel is growing fast and I don't have time to message or work with everybody. So best way to get a hold of me is on TikTok or Instagram at Statements by Alex, or to fill out the booking link and I can get you in for a personal reading. I also do sliding scale stuff now, so $2 a minute. So if you can't afford the full, you know, $100 something for a reading, then tell me what you can afford and we'll go for the appropriate amount of time. So thanks for watching. Hope you learned a lot. Let me know in the comments if you have any ideas for more topics, and I'll see you guys in the next one.